So as Ratapala explained to the king, what we read yesterday, life is slipping away in every moment. We're constantly aging, and death is continuously approaching. And there's no way out, because we came into being due to causes and conditions. So our very nature is the nature of momentary change, and that whatever exists is constantly disintegrating, changing into something else. And so it is with this body, which is the basis of our life. This body that we cherish so much and pamper and worry about and try to make comfortable and please. And yet this body is a traitor, because it has its own continuity, its own agenda. And when the time of death arrives, it's there. The body can't stop itself from dying, and we can't stop it from dying. So when we think about the nature of impermanence, it makes us really appreciate our lives. And it makes us set our priorities and evaluate if we're using our time wisely or not. And when we do that, then our life becomes quite vivid, because we really focus on doing what's important. And all the petty stuff we just leave behind, we don't get involved in, because we see in the long run it's not really very important. Of course, we have a lot of habit with short-term pleasure. And so we very easily go for the short-term pleasure and override our own priorities. So it's important to continuously think about impermanence and death, to continuously set our priorities, and then to monitor our mind, be mindful of our priorities, be on the lookout for distracting forces that steal away our time and energy. And that way we can make our lives quite meaningful, developing the realizations of the path in our own mind, really uniting our minds with the Dharma. And so let's do that, not merely for our own benefit, but seeing that everybody else is like us, knowing that if we can overcome our ignorance and self-centeredness, then we can be of really great benefit to other living beings. And so to have that long-term motivation. Venerable Pema was sharing with me that something I said in the discussion group yesterday really struck her and kind of opened a door to a different perspective of seeing that what we do matters in the universe. You know, what we do as individuals, what we do as groups. It's not just that we do something and it fades away, but it really influences other people. Yeah. And when you have that viewpoint, it changes how you look at things. Yeah, because you realize, oh, what I'm saying, what I'm doing, what I'm thinking is going to impact other people, the people around me. It's going to impact myself in the long term in terms of the karma I create. And it's going to impact society as well. And so she was saying, tell me if I misquote you at all, that, you know, we're doing something here at the Abbey, and yet on a day-to-day basis, we're all involved in all our little dramas, personal dramas, yeah, and how chaotic it seems. You know, we have this very noble long-term purpose, but on a day-to-day, it's like, oh, you know, I like what this person did, and I don't like what that person did. And why did they say this to me? And why, you know, why did that wasp come and bite me and not bite the other person? And, you know, how it's so funny because we, on one level, we have this awareness of, you know, the vast scope of interdependency. But that's kind of an intellectual awareness. And then on a day-to-day basis, we're stuck in our own stuff. Yeah, so that can, you know, sometimes really be a tragedy. So here, today, we're going to have another story, okay, that's similar to the first one, but with a different ending. And it's a very good example of how our actions influence other people. Okay? Because this is the origin story of the first Parajika in the Bhikshu and Bhikshuni Vinaya. There are root precepts. They're called Parajikas in Sanskrit. And if you violate those, then you are no longer a monastic. When the Buddha, when the Sangha first began, people were behaving very well and were highly motivated. They were quite exceptional disciples, and so there were no precepts set down. All the precepts that we have now came about due to individual circumstances where somebody messed up, you know, and maybe I shouldn't say messed up. Somebody made a boo-boo. They messed up, okay. So sometimes the Tibetan lamas say, oh, but we should see those who did that as kind because as a result we have the precepts now. But the idea is that the Buddha didn't start the Sangha with, you know, do this and don't do that. It's, you know, when people started doing things that were disruptive and unethical, then all the precepts were made because of real life situations like that. Okay, so this is the origin story of the first Parajika. So, so it takes place, there was the town in Vesali, and outside of it was a village called Talandaka, okay? And so there lived Sudina, the son of a prominent merchant. Okay, now, what's very interesting is a huge amount of the story is identical to Ratapala's story, okay, which we just read. So I'll abbreviate that part, and then I'll read the parts that are different, Okay, so the Buddha was coming to Vasali to give a teaching, and Sudina decided to go and hear what he had to say and listen to the teaching. And while he was listening to the teaching, just like Ratapala, he had the feeling, so far as I understand the Dharma taught by the Master, it is no easy matter for one who lives in a house to lead a spiritual life that is utterly perfect, pure, and as polished, like a polished conch shell. Perhaps I should cut off my hair and beard, put on the yellow robes, and go forth from home into homelessness. Okay. Now we're going to be talking a little bit later along. What does this mean, going from home to homelessness? Because we may have our ideas of what this means. But often our ideas don't really go deep enough to see the whole quagmire that is there. But we'll get into it. So anyway, he thought the teaching was fantastic. He thought it was good to ordain because difficult to practice as a householder. So he went to the Buddha. He asked to ordain. The Buddha said, "Do you have your parents' permission?" And he said no. And so then he went back to home. And then the same thing, the same discussion as Ratapala had with his parents, Sudina had with his parents, okay? And so, they said, "You are our only child, you are beloved, you live in comfort, you're well cared for, you have no experience of suffering. If you died, we would miss you so much, but how can we let you do this? Because that's like letting you die when you're still alive." And Sudina again, explained to his parents about why he wanted to ordain. His parents refused. So it happened 3 times, just like Ratapala. Then he laid down on the ground and he said, "I either die right here or go forth." And he stopped eating and did not eat for the next 7 meals. Okay? So I'm sure they make it sound like he never got up. I'm sure he had to go to the bathroom at some point. Okay? But, so he wasn't eating. He was lying on the bare ground, God forbid. And his parents are freaking out. And they, like Ratapala's parents said, "Get up and eat and drink and go out with your friends and have a good time." And Sudina just remained silent and didn't say anything. And that happened 3 times too. Okay. And then they called, then Sudina's friends came. Yeah, just like Ratapala's did. And they said, "Look, you're being too extreme. And, please eat and drink and let's go out. There's some good entertainment." And, and nothing happened. And so Sudina still refused to get up. And then the friends, said to the mother and father, "If you don't allow him to go forth, he will die here. But if you allow him to go forth, you will see him afterwards. If he does not enjoy going forth, what alternative will he have but to come back here? So allow Sudina to go forth." Okay, so the parents, very reluctantly, because they didn't want their son to die of starvation, and thought, again, it's just a phase, he'll get over it. said, okay, we give you permission. Okay, so then Sudina was very happy. He went back to the Buddha and he said, I have my parents' permission to ordain. Okay, and he received the going forth from the Buddha. He received the full ordination. And then, what he did was he practiced extreme asceticism. Okay, so this wasn't in Ratapalas. So he was practicing different kinds of ascetic practices. So these are called Dhutanga, and they have to do with sleeping under a tree or sleeping in the open rather than sleeping in a home, going on alms round instead of eating only the first however number of houses, the food from a certain number of houses, instead of accepting invitations to go to houses for the meal, to wear really raggy robes, okay, to sleep sitting up instead of lying down. So these kind of very ascetic practices. So this is what Sudina did. In general, the Buddha did not allow his disciples to do those practices, but the kinds that he did allow were the kinds that Sudina were doing. Okay, but the really extreme ones that some of the other mendicants were doing at that time, standing on one foot, walking across fire, jumping on tridents, really yucky kind of stuff. The Buddhist monastics weren't allowed to do that because the Buddha knew that tormenting the body did not overcome attachment. Okay, so Sudina practiced the ascetic practices, living in the wilderness, going on alms round, wearing rags, going on continuous alms round, and he dwelt depending on a certain village of the Vajjans. Okay, so the Vajjans were one people, one kind of group in the area there. Okay, but at that time the Vajjans were short of food and stricken by hunger, with crops blighted and turned to straw, and it was not easy to keep oneself going by collecting alms. Okay. Now Venerable Siddhanath thought to himself, at present the Vajjans are short of food and stricken by hunger, with crops blighted and turned to straw, and it is not easy to keep oneself going by collecting alms. But I have many relations in Vasali who are rich, have great wealth and property, much gold and silver, many resources and requisites, much wealth in grain. Perhaps I should live in dependence on my relatives. Because of me, my relatives will be able to make offerings and create merit, and the monks will obtain requisites, and I will not go short of alms food. Okay, so then Venerable Siddhanath, having put his lodging in order, took his bowl and robe and set out for Vasali, where he arrived by traveling in stages. There the Venerable Siddhanath stayed in the hall with the peaked roof in the great wood, so not in the forest, but in the hall. And the relations of Venerable Siddhanath heard that he had arrived in Vasali, and they brought him 60 offerings of barley as a gift of food. Then Venerable Siddhanath, having given these 60 offerings of barley to the monks, dressed in the morning, took his robe and bowl, and entered the village of Kalandaka for alms. As he was going about Kalandaka on a continuous alms tour, he came to his father's house. Okay, now let's pause here. What do you think of his choice to go to Vasali to collect alms?
Dangerous.
dangerous. Why?
Oh, honey, it's so nice to see you. We haven't seen you in so long. Let's feed you. Your rags look terrible. Oh, we don't want to see you looking like that. Let's give you something nice to wear. Your feet are so dirty, honey. Let's wash them. Let's put something beautiful on those feet. It's terrible.
Yeah. What about a bed to sleep on?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Come inside.
Yeah. Okay. How about other people? You think maybe he had a good motivation to go and relieve the stress on the Vajrayans who were short on food? You know, and get some good food for the monks. It wasn't just for himself. He took all these monks there and gave them these 60 offerings of barley. Are you sure that it was dangerous?
Maybe that was his way of just justifying what he was doing.
Oh.
So I don't think maybe his motivation was in the right place, but that was just a justification for his actions.
Yeah. Do we ever do that? For our actions? You know, justify them in some way or another so that outwardly they look quite kind and virtuous. I mean, people could say, oh, he's alleviating the stress on the Vajrayans who don't have much food and who feel obligated to feed the monks. So he's alleviating the pressure on them, going someplace where it's rich, you know, helping his relatives create so much merit, getting the monks more food. Yeah. So what's wrong with that?
Well, I think it would have been okay if those had been his actual motivations, but his motivation was, I want to go to my relatives where I'm going to get fed, clothed, treated well, be comfortable, forget about the ascetic practices. I just want to be taken care of.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so just what she said, you know, he was justifying it. But, you know, in the world, we always look at how somebody looks from the outside and not what their real motivation is. So from the outside, people could praise him for what he's doing. You know, oh, anyway, those ascetic practices were so extreme. You know, who does he think he is? Acting like that.
I think the danger is even not, maybe his motivation was good, maybe it wasn't, but his mind wasn't strong enough to take the temptation. Mm-hmm. It doesn't say that he was in Arhat before he went back, no, as opposed to Ranapala, right? Yeah. So that for me is the danger.
Okay.
His own mind's capacity to be in relationship properly, yeah, with that situation.
Right. He was not an Arhat. He was a regular practitioner. Yeah. With a kind of messed up motivation.
In the first story, Ratnapala, didn't he ask permission? Didn't he go to his teacher and say, would it be okay if I went? And this guy did not?
Yes, he went to the Buddha and asked the Buddha's permission. And Sudina just made up his own mind and went and did it. Okay. We'll go here, 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 and then, yeah, Venerable Damcha. What?
It's like there's a sports commentator in the
back. Okay.
No, anyhow, I think this whole thing too of like my relatives especially are going to make merit with the Sangha is also sticky. Yeah. It's how to say it sounds almost transactional. It would be like if I say only my parents can offer lunch to venerable children to make merit, the rest of you too bad, right? Uh-huh. Something's off there already.
Yeah, some favoritism.
He sounds like an extremist. Like he wants to do super ascetic, and then when he runs into difficulties, he's like, let me go back to the wealth that I'm used to. You know, there's no like balance there.
Okay. So this is another really good point that we often see in practitioners. Yeah. This thing of, I'm doing it like this, and, you know, like that. And then when there's a little bit of difficulty, then all of a sudden switch, go the other way. Yeah. And so, yeah, we see this often. Yeah. And sometimes the people who claim the loudest that they are immune to certain temptations are the ones who fall to those temptations. Yeah. So I always tell people, never say, oh, that's not a problem for me, I've overcome it. Yeah, because until you attain the path of seeing, it's there. And, sometimes our arrogance prevents us from seeing what is in our own mind. And we think, oh, I'm immune to that. That's no problem for me. And then out of left field, boing, it comes.
I think this. I think this is a lesson for also for what could happen here at the Abbey. If the time gets a little bit more difficult environmentally or politically, economically, and we have not enough resources here to really check our motivations and to check with our teachers. And I also know when I went back to Germany, several people approached me and said, "Oh yeah, it's so good you are back here. It's too extreme over there. It's not in accord with reality. So you have to intermingle with the world, So
German politics are reality, huh?
Interestingly, also monastics who are not trained in such environments, they said that to me. They said, it's not real what you are doing here. You have to intermingle with us.
Yeah. You have to come back, settle down, get a job. You can wear robes and go to the Dharma Center, because that's what they told you to do, isn't it? Yeah. So we left it. He's at his father's house. Okay. Now, there's no scorn here from his parents, like there was in Ratapala's case. Yeah. But what's interesting is the whole initial thing with his parents and friends was the same. And he showed this incredible, great resolve to practice. And you'll see, it come out again as we go through the story. Okay, so at that time, the female slave of Venerable Sudina's relations wanted to throw away the previous evening's porridge. But Venerable Sudina said to her, "If that is to be thrown away, sister, put it here in my bowl." As the slave girl of Venerable Sudina's relations was putting the previous evening's porridge into his bowl, she recognized his hands, feet, and voice. She then went to his mother and said, like with Ratapala, "Please know, madame, that the young master Sudina is back." And the mother burst out crying, it just says here, she said, "If you speak the truth, I will make you a freed woman." But we know how mothers are what they're going to do. They're going to burst out crying and scream with joy. Okay. Just then, Venerable Sudina was eating the previous evening's porridge at the base of a certain wall. Oh, can you imagine? He's sitting there at the bottom of a wall on the ground eating leftover porridge. The Venerable Sudina's father coming home from work saw him there. He approached him and said, "But Sudina isn't there. And you're eating old porridge. Isn't there your own home to go to?" "We went to your house, householder. That's where we received this porridge." Then Venerable Sudina's father took him by the arm and said, "Come, Sudina, let's go to the house." Then Venerable Sudina went to his father's house and sat down on a prepared seat. And his father said to him, "Eat, my dear son, eat, eat." And if the father's saying that, imagine what the mother's saying. Okay. But he responds and he says, "There's no need, householder. I have finished eating for today." Yeah, so he kept his precepts. He was restrained there. Then he was invited back for the meal the next day, and he consented by being silent, and then he rose and left. Okay, then his mother had the ground smeared with fresh cow dung. Now, isn't that just what you want your mom to do? In ancient India, this is how you make the floor smooth and beautiful and nice. Yeah. Let's not try it in our countries. You look horrified. But this is in that culture with the resources. And then she had 2 heaps made, one of gold coins and the other of gold. The heaps were so large that a man standing on one side could not see a man standing on the other. Hiding these heaps with screens and preparing a seat between them, surrounded by a curtain. Okay. She addressed Venerable Sudina's former wife. Daughter-in-law, adorn yourself in the way that our son Sudina found you especially attractive. Yes, madame, she responded. Okay, daughter-in-laws have little power in ancient Indian home. They were kind of just above the servants. Anyway. Okay, then in the morning, Venerable Sudina dressed, took his bowl and robe, and went to his father's house, where he sat down on the prepared seat. His father approached him, uncovered the heaps, and said, "This dowry, dear Sudina, the fortune from your mother is yours. Another is the fortune from your father," and somehow a third pile appeared. "Another from your ancestors. It is possible, Sudina, to return to the low life, enjoy wealth, and make merit." Okay, so come, please do this. What's wrong with enjoying life? You're too extreme. Yeah. What in the world do you think you're doing, kiddo? You have this gold. You're our only child. You're responsible for taking care of the family. You're responsible for doing all the rites that must be done after we die. And, you can stay in the household life and create merit. You can give so much dana to the monastics and create great merit, so you don't have to worry about your next life. This is much more balanced. Come on. Okay, it sounds quite reasonable, doesn't it? Yeah. I mean, I have many people say similar things to me. Yeah. And then there's a whole group of people who say, I just got a job offer from the such and such a company, and I'm going to have a really high salary, and I think it's really good that I take this job. The company, I don't know how ethical it is, but it's really good. I will make a lot of money, further my career, and then I will be able to give a lot of money to the monasteries to support the Sangha, to make Buddhism spread. And I think, that's a good thing for me to do in my life. I have talents. I'll offer them to society, make a lot of money, and create merit by, giving dana. It sounds wonderful. I've yet to receive $1 from these people who promised so many donations. Not that I'm attached to those donations. I've certainly learned not that people say all sorts of things. But you see people in their minds justify what they're doing. And I'll create so much merit and benefit the Dharma. Yeah. And then what happens in the end? Yeah. They use the money for other purposes. Yeah. Because then they have their family, they have their kids, and you have to have a certain appearance in society, and your kids have to have certain toys, because if you don't give your kids the same kind of video games and toys and such that their friends have, then your kids don't like you and they think you're a cheapskate and they're jealous of their friends, and you look bad in front of the friends' parents because the friends' parents are giving their kids all sorts of stuff. So we see, how this whole works and how people make decisions and think, oh yes, it's much better to be practical and I'll create merit and help the Dharma. But then it doesn't happen once reality is there.
I've noticed that people who say, kind of like in an excuse, I can't practice now, but I'll practice later, they never get to it. And I find that to be the same way in myself. When I make excuses now about something, I will make the excuses later too. So it seems like a very similar thing in my mind. Like it's better to recognize what I'm doing and, be more straightforward with myself about what I'm doing.
Yeah. Because we're all very good at excuse making, aren't we? And this is one thing that I admire about many of the people I meet, in Asia, who choose to be householders. And they don't say, oh, the Sangha is too extreme and do all this kind of rationalization. They say, I really admire what the Sangha is doing, and I don't have the capacity to do that right now. I don't have the wish to do that in this lifetime. So I will be a lay practitioner, and I'll do my best, and I'll create merit. But they have a lot of respect for the Sangha. Yeah, so they don't do that same kind of rationalization process. That the Sangha, we're susceptible to, aren't we? As you pointed out. Okay, so then his father, again, a second and third time, Sudina responded to his father, I'm not able to do so, father. I cannot. I'm enjoying the spiritual life. So he refused to accept all the wealth. Then a second and third time the father offered. He replied the same way. And then finally Sudina said, if you would not get offended, householder, we could tell you what to do. And his father says, speak, Sudina. Well then, householder, make some large bags of hemp cloth, fill them with the coins and gold, and take them away in carts. Had a lot of stuff. And dump them in the middle of the Ganges. And why? Because you would avoid the danger, fear, terror, and trouble with protection that they will cause you. Because taking care of all your wealth is a hassle. Okay, so he gave the same advice to his father. Ratapala's father, did he do that? Or did he just, it didn't say whether he did it or not. But Sudina's father became displeased and thought, how could our son Sudina speak like this? Then he addressed Venerable Sudina's former wife. Well now, daughter-in-law, as you were dear and beloved by him, perhaps our son Sudina will listen to you. Then the former wife of Venerable Sudina took hold of his feet, and said, what are these nymphs like, my lord son, for whose sake you lead the spiritual life? And he said, I do not lead the spiritual life, sister, for the sake of nymphs. And then the former wife thought, from today, my lord's son called me sister, and she fainted on the spot. Okay? So very similar. And, he refused. He wasn't enticed by her, and he refused. And she fainted. And then he said to his father, as Ratapala did, "If, householder, there is food to be given, give it, but do not annoy me." And then they served the food and they said, "Eat." Okay, then with their own hands, Venerable Sudina's mother and father served and satisfied him with various kinds of delicious food. Then, when Venerable Sudina had finished his meal, his mother said to him, okay, they aren't giving up. "This family, dear Sudina, is rich, has great wealth and property, much gold and silver, many resources and requisites, much wealth in grain. It is possible, dear Sudina, to return to the low life, enjoy wealth, and make merit. Come, Sudina, please do so." "Please, son, you're causing me so much grief and pain." And he says, "Mother, I am not able to do so. I cannot. I am enjoying the spiritual life." And a second time and a third time, the mother said that. Yeah. Okay. So the last time, the mother, she's changing her status a little bit here. She says, "Dear Sudina, this family is rich, has great wealth and property, much gold and silver, many resources and requisites, much wealth in grain. For this reason, dear Sudina, beget offspring. Do not let the Lichavis take over our heirless property." Okay. So, the mother's trying a different strategy because they have the American dream. I mean, the Indian dream. They're a rich family in the merchant class, okay? And of course, they're keeping up with the Kumaras. And if the Luchavis have, more stuff, then they're jealous. And then if the Luchavis take over their stuff, Luchavis is another, group that's not too far away. If they took over, they could easily take over all the family's wealth because there's not going to be a male heir. Because Sudin is gone, he didn't have a son. So as soon as the parents die, the Lichavis are going to come in and take over all the family's wealth. And for the parents who worked so hard, to accumulate this wealth, that is like their life falling apart, that they can't pass their wealth on to their child. Okay? And that there's not going to be a male heir to do the prayers for them after they die. Okay. So for this reason, dear Sudina, beget offspring. Do not let the Lichavis take over heirless property. And Sudina said, "It is possible for me to do this, mother." Okay, so he didn't, when his wife was, petitioning him at his feet, all decked out, he said no. Okay, when the family's reputation was at stake, when pleasing his parents was at stake, he said yes. Okay. Some people say that he thought to do this because he was tired of all the problems with his relatives bothering him, and he thought that if he had a child, a son in particular, then the relatives would no longer bother him about looking after all of their property. And so then he would be able to follow the Dharma of recluses very well without the hassle from his family kind of, guilt tripping him on he needs to take care of the property. So it's interesting, this might look like a good motivation. My family, they're just bugging me so much about looking after all of their property. I'll go ahead, I'll give them a child, and then they'll leave me alone. And then I can, go back to the wandering life that I so enjoy. Yeah, makes my parents happy. After the child is born, they're going to stop bothering me. Yeah, and my parents are pressuring me, and I really don't like being pressured, so I'm just going to give them what they want. Okay, what do you think of that? Not going to end well. But he's not attached to the sex itself. He refused when his wife was all decked out. Is it really so bad? He makes his mother happy, his father happy. When they die, they'll be very peaceful because they'll know that their grandson will take care of the property. The grandson will do all the rituals. His parents will stop bugging him. He can go back to the wandering like he did before without this feeling of obligation to his parents and without his parents texting him every day saying, but we need an heir, otherwise the Lichavis are going to take our fortune. And we worked so hard for this fortune so that our children could live with a good life. We work so hard for this. And you don't care about how hard we work to earn this fortune. You're just walking out on it. You don't appreciate what we did for our children. What? Slippery slope. But there's a hook there, isn't there? Yeah, there's a hook. Especially when mom and dad say, you don't appreciate how hard we worked so that you could have a comfortable life. And you're just walking out on this, not appreciating what we did for you. And then all the Lichavis are going to come and they're going to take it. And all of our friends are then going to look at the family and say, oh, those parents worked so hard to have a good life for their children. And their child, Sudina, was such a flake. He just walked out and disappointed them. He could have at least given them a child. He could at least. It's no sweat off his back. Well, maybe he gets a little sweaty. But, he could at least.
Children, as your dad says, it just takes a few minutes. It's no big deal.
Yeah. I thanked my dad one time for me. My dad, he said, it just took a minute, wasn't it? It's not a big deal. So then, all the neighbors would say, look at him. He was following in his father's business. He had such a good life ahead. He walked out and he's going and wearing rags. What a disgrace to the family. Yeah, so unappreciative. It's hard, isn't it?
I don't feel like he was really helping his parents. I felt like it would have been more of a help to explain to them why those things weren't important and the true meaning, and what a true burden all those things were to them, and to have kept his precepts as opposed to give in to their pressure. So it was almost like he was feeding their attachment to praise and approval and feeding into all those things. So I think really it was even though maybe he thought he was helping, it was really to their detriment.
But what you're saying is true. If the parents would have listened, what if the parents would have said, what kind of BS are you talking about? Our gold, throw our gold in the middle of the Ganges? This gold is our security. Yeah, now our family has security. We have gold. We can help you. We can create merit. You're telling us you want to continue being celibate. Look, if we had been celibate, you wouldn't have been born. So what's wrong? Are you saying the whole human race should go out of existence because we're all going to be celibate? And who's going to do the funeral rites for us? If our child doesn't do that, we won't have a good rebirth. So you're explaining all this stuff about blah, blah, this stuff is a hindrance. This is nonsense you're talking, kiddo. Okay? So your version has the ideal parents who would actually listen. Yeah? Yeah. When I was at my parents' home before I ordained, they had a cat that had fleas. And my mother was washing the fleas off the cat, and the fleas, of course, were drowning. And I said, Mom, please don't do that. You're killing the fleas. And she got furious at me. She was so mad. She said, and you're killing us with what you want to do. My mom had some doozies,
So what I'm, it's not about the parents. It's about his huge attachment to reputation, to praise, his huge aversion to criticism and a bad reputation, and says very, very little about the strength of his monastic motivation. That it's all around how it looks. Mm-hmm. And it's not, it's about how it looks for him. It's not about his family. It's about how Sudina is going to be perceived now and in future lives or whatever. But it speaks a lot about the fact that his monastic aspiration is not standing on any firm ground whatsoever when push comes to shove, when it really is called to be able to be his strength. He's just totally it's not even there.
But it's interesting, isn't it? It wasn't the wealth that he didn't cave under the wealth. He didn't cave under the sex. He caved under identity and family pressure. Yeah, attachment to family pressure. And, how not even how he would look, how the whole family would look. Yeah.
There's also a flaw, at least in the way that you're telling it, that we often make, that if I do just this one thing, then this will happen, and that will happen, and that will happen, and that will happen, and that will happen, and it'll be fine. But this and that and that and that never happen the way we think if we just do this action and set everything up, and then we'll control the situation. Mm-hmm. We can't. Mm-hmm. We can't, and we often fall for that.
Yeah.
Was it so taboo to just, instead of saying dump it in the Ganges, give it to the Buddha or offer it to the Buddha?
He was, he could have said that. Yeah, that actually would have been more meritorious for the parents. But I think the dramatic part in the story is, you're just throwing it away. Yeah, I mean, it's making the point that stuff is totally useless for you. Of course, if he was being practical and, cared for his parents' good karma, he would have said, give it to the Buddha. But of course, the parents probably wouldn't have done that. They didn't want to give it to the Buddha. Yeah. The parents would have said, we'd rather dump it in the Ganges. Yeah, than give it to this Buddha. Because the Buddha is who took you away from us. The Buddha's the cause of this whole family disaster to start with. Yeah, we'd rather dump it in the Ganges. We don't want to give it to any Buddhists. I know that one from experience too. Yeah.
I think too, though, I mean, there's the whole weight of the culture as well. Because to be an Asian man, there's tremendous responsibility. I don't know how it is in India, but I would think it parallels the way it is for the Chinese. I mean, I have relatives who, upon financial failure, killed themselves because you failed the whole family as the eldest son who's supposed to bring money back. So there's that whole, your life is worth nothing. I bet if he's conditioned that way, that's weighing on him.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have the realization to break through that.
Yeah. Yeah. And the heavy pressure. I know in Chinese cultures too, especially with the men, which is one reason why in Taiwan you have so many more nuns than monks, is the men have so much pressure to have a child, a son, to carry on the family name. Yeah.
I actually was thinking about the responses that you both made, and to me, it seems like the thing about the sense of responsibility is what it brings up for me, and what I think it's important to see is that I feel like I have a responsibility to my family, actually, and I feel like I have it even as a monastic still. For me, it's a question of how that can look, actually, and to actually recognize mostly what Venerable Chuni said. It is like a slippery slope. You have to you can't get involved and think you can control things. So I find it to be more a matter of ignorance, actually. I don't know.
What do you mean?
The ignorance of thinking that you can do something and things will be taken care of. Mm-hmm. Life keeps going on. New situations keep coming up.
Right.
I mean, even if he has a child, then there's just the next thing down the line that he's going to get roped into.
Right.
Yeah. Right. He'll have a girl. It's just like. Yeah. But I don't think it really. I don't know. I find it to be quite a dilemma, and I don't buy that it's fully just because you're worried about your reputation or any of that. Most those things are involved in our relationships with our family and this and that. But once you get through that, I think it's more a matter of trying to make responsible choices that. Yeah, I'm not willing to say that you can't be there for your family in some way. Mm-hmm. I'm not willing to say that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's a thing of how you create the relationship with your family. Yeah. And his way was he thought, I'll do this. And, we haven't come to the rest of the story, but he does slide down the slippery slope. So far, you've been lucky.
Yeah, I know. I've been on the edge.
You've been on the edge, and I came to you and I said, be careful here.
Right. I have really been on the edge. It's dangerous. I agree with what you say. It's very dangerous.
It's very dangerous. Yeah. And so far you've been lucky. So there's different ways to be kind to our parents without getting involved in the stickiness of the family life. Yeah. So it doesn't mean we never speak to our parents and we're just like, get lost and leave me alone. Okay, it's not that. We don't treat our family that way. But we are very clear where our loyalty is and where our major responsibility is. And it's not with the family, it's with the Sangha. Yeah. And we have to be very, very clear about that, because the family pressure will continue. Yeah, I mean, I told you about my friend who lives in this very nice house that her parents support for her. She doesn't have to want for anything. She can go to so many teachings and doesn't have to worry about working or anything. She just buys the ticket and goes off to teachings here and goes, because the parents take care of everything for her. Yeah, but she has to go on the family vacations and go every Sunday night for dinner and talk to her parents several times during the week. And when things happen in the family, they call her and they're upset, and she has to get involved in the family drama. Yeah. So there's, she's, and it affects the way she holds her precepts too, because she has money and she can go out and spend it, and and she gives offerings, and that's wonderful. But they don't do sojung, so there's no kind of confession, and it's difficult. Yeah, I had one person when I lived in Italy. There was one monk, similar situation with his family. His family supported everything, and there were lots of strings attached, and he eventually disrobed.
How do you communicate that to the family or lay people in general, that the Sangha is your main focus, without annoying them?
Yeah, you don't go and say that to them. You don't, with your family, you can't be direct like that, at least not with my family. Forget it. I mean, people they would feel hurt, they would feel rejected, So you just show it by your actions. Yeah, they invite you to come for some family event, and you say, I'm sorry, I'm unable to come. Yeah. And because there are other children who live far away, who are working, when they say, oh, I can't come because I'm working, the parents understand that. But they have a hard time understanding when we say, we can't come, because they think, well, you're not working. Why can't you just pick up and leave? Well, I live in a community, and there's, things like that. But you show more by your behavior and what you will do and what you won't do. And you're very clear with them and what you'll do and what you won't do. Yeah. And then they get used to it. Yeah, they get used to it. If you're not clear about what you'll do and what you won't do, and one time you accept the behavior and then the next time you don't, then it gets very confusing for them. Or you accept the invitation and then the next time you don't. One time, you'll go for the birthday party, and then the next time you won't go for the birthday party. Then it gets very confusing for them, and they'll keep asking because, you've gone once, well, why not again? Whereas at the beginning, if you just kind of explain, I don't do that. Yeah. Now, having said that, when I was a baby nun, then my brother got married, and my mother, my parents who hadn't spoken to me in 4 years, called and asked me to come for the wedding, and told me to look normal. And Lama Yeshe was coming to the center about that time, and I said, what do I do? This was back in 1980, I think. And I said, what do I do? And Lama said, you go and be California girl. And I said, Lama, I don't want to be California girl. It's like, I grew up in California. It's like, I don't want to be California girl. And he said, you go. So I had to play the role for the time I was there. It was very difficult. We played dress up. The women in the community brought various clothes because he told me to wear lay clothes, and he told me to grow my hair a little bit so it wasn't totally shaved. And so we played dress up, and I got a couple of outfits. And, I let my hair grow a little bit. And then I wore my robes on the plane, and right before we landed at LAX, I changed into this something. And, because I knew that if I arrived in LAX with a shaved head, and Lama knew this too, my mother would go hysterical in the middle of the airport. I'm not joking. She would have started screaming and crying and carrying on. So I did that, and I went for the wedding. Yeah. She brought one of her dresses. She was very kind. I got to wear a maroon dress. Yeah. She said, I think this is your color. Okay, Mom, I'll wear it. I wore it. I went to the wedding. I did not sing. I did not dance. At a Jewish wedding, to not sing and not dance when you were a singer, especially when you were a singer and a dancer beforehand, but even if you weren't, and they made it through that. They made it through that. And then I came back to, then Sangh Rinpoche was in the U.S., and I stayed there and cooked for him, and then I went back to India.
What I had the difference between the two was what's his name? Ratapala was addressing his family in a very impersonal way. He was calling them householder, and he doesn't seem to be identifying them as his family anymore.
Yeah.
Whereas the second story, there is still the identification of them as their family, and hence that they were able to hook him.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Shall I go on with the story? Okay, so he had just said, it is possible for me to do this, Mother. Yeah, so calling her mother, not householder. Yeah, where are you staying at present, she asked. In the great wood, he said. Then Venerable Sudina rose from his seat and departed. Then the mother of Venerable Sudina addressed his former wife. Daughter-in-law, as soon as you menstruate, please tell me. Very well, Madame, she replied. Not long afterwards, Venerable Sudina's former wife menstruated, and she reported it to Venerable Sudina's mother. Okay, and so then they probably waited a week or so. Then, daughter-in-law, adorn yourself in the way that our son Sudina found you especially attractive. Very well, Madame, she replied. Then Venerable Sudina's mother, together with his former wife, approached Venerable Sudina in the great wood. There she said to him, this family, dear Sudina, is rich. It has great wealth and property, much gold and silver, many resources and requisites, much wealth and grain. For this reason, Sudina, beget offspring. Do not let the Lichavis have our heirless property. And he said, it is possible for me to do this, Mother. He then took his former wife by the arm, plunged into the great wood, and because there was no training rule, remember, there had been no precepts made at that time. Okay, so there being no training rule, and he seeing no danger. There's no real rule, and he didn't see any danger. I'm just doing this. It takes a minute. It makes my parents happy. The family's safe. It gets them off my back. Yeah. Had sexual intercourse with his former wife 3 times. As a result, she conceived. So he wasn't even sleeping with any old woman because he was seduced or anything like that. It was the obligation to the family. Okay, so she conceived. The earth gods cried out, "Good sirs, the Sangha of monks has been healthy and free from danger, but Sudina, the Kalandaka, has produced a tumor, has produced danger." Okay. The gods belonging to the heaven of the four great kings. So this is in the Deva realm, the lowest realm of gods. The four great kings, you often see them at the entrance to monasteries. Yeah, they look like four great kings, and they're warding off any kind of danger. So they heard the cry of the earth gods, and in turn they cried out, "Good sirs, the Sangha of monks has been healthy and free from danger, but Sudina, the Kalandaka, has produced a tumor, has produced danger." And then the gods of the 33, they heard that, and they said the same thing. And the Yama gods heard that, and they said the same thing. And then the Tushita gods heard it, and they said it. And then the gods who delight in creation, they said it. The gods who control the creation of others, they said it. And then the gods belonging to the retinue of the supreme beings in turn cried out, "Good sirs, the Sangha of monks has been healthy and free from danger, but Sudina, the Kalandaka, has produced a tumor, has produced danger." Thus, in that moment, in that instant, the report spread as far as the Brahma world. So all through the desire realm gods up to the Brahma gods in the form realm. Okay, so he thought it was some little thing that would take a minute, and look at the effect it had on, the earth gods and the six realms of desire realm gods, and even into the Brahma realm. What we do affects other people. Then the pregnancy of Venerable Sudina's wife developed, and she eventually gave birth to a son. Oh. Now the friends of Venerable Sudina called this boy Bijaka. They called Venerable Sudina's former wife Bijaka's mother, and they called Venerable Sudina Bijaka's father. Okay. And then they jump ahead a little bit. There's a jump ahead in the story, that after some time, both the mother and the son went forth from home into homelessness, and they realized our hardship. So for the son and the wife, it turned out well. But, okay, just after this, Venerable Sudina was anxious and remorseful. And he thought, "Indeed, it's a loss for me. It's no gain. Indeed, it's badly gained by me, not well gained. Having gone forth into such a well-proclaimed Dharma and training, I was not able for life to practice the perfectly complete and pure spiritual life." And because of his anxiety and remorse, he became thin, haggard, and pale, his veins protruding all over his limbs. He became sad, of sluggish mind, depressed, miserable, depressed, remorseful, weighed down with grief. So he fulfilled his obligation, his responsibility to his parents, but he feels lousy now. If I just pause for a moment here, this is the story of how the first Parajika came. When we look at the stories for the other Parajikas, they too, how some monk did something, stole or killed or lied. it's always in a situation that you would least expect it to happen. Like here with Surina, if we had heard, that he was married to this beautiful woman, then got ordained, and then broke his precept, what would we have, our immediate thought have been? He went back to his wife. That's the logical thing we would have thought. He went back to his wife, or he met somebody else who was, just as wonderful, and he had sex, and that's how this happened. But that's not how it happened. It wasn't through the physical temptation. Yeah. And each of the stories, when it talks about, like the story about killing, I won't tell you what the story is, but our instant thought is, someone, killed someone? Well, probably, some guy was really bugging him. He got really ticked off and killed him. That's not how the killing happened. It happened in a way you would never expect. Okay? And so the stories, I think, are pointing out to us that, you think you have to safeguard the precept in this way by abandoning this and this, but you're not necessarily seeing the whole picture, because something could come out of left field in the least way you expect it. And because your mind's not firm, there you go. Okay? Because I thought a lot about this when I was reading those stories. Like, wow, this isn't how you would think someone would do that. But I think that's the reason why. Because it's not how you would think it would happen. And yet it happened. Okay, so back to Surina. He's thin, he lost weight, he's depressed, he feels horrible. And he's holding it all inside. Then the monks, because he's so ashamed of himself, he doesn't want to tell anybody. Then the monks, who were Venerable Sudina's friends, said to him, Formerly, friend Sudina, you were handsome, your features rounded, your face a good color, your skin clear. But now you are thin, haggard, and pale, your veins protruding all over your limbs. And you are sad, of sluggish mind, miserable, depressed, remorseful, weighed down with grief. Could it be, friend Sudina, that you lead this spiritual life dissatisfied? In other words, his friend didn't even suspect that he did something like that. They thought he was just dissatisfied, and it was hard for him to be a monk. But he responds, I do not, friends, lead the spiritual life dissatisfied. I have done a bad deed. I have had sexual intercourse with my former wife. That is why I am anxious, sad, have sluggish mind, miserable, depressed, remorseful, and so on. I was not able for life to practice the perfectly complete and pure spiritual life. The friend said, Friend Sudina, no wonder you are anxious. No wonder you feel remorse. In that having gone forth in such a well-proclaimed Dharma and training, you were not able for life to practice the perfectly complete and pure spiritual life. It is not, friend, the Dharma taught by the Master in various ways for the sake of dispassion, not for the sake of passion. For the sake of freedom from bondage, not for the sake of bondage. For the sake of non-grasping, not for the sake of grasping. When the Dharma is taught by the Master for the sake of dispassion, how can you be intent upon passion? When the Dharma is taught by the Master for the sake of freedom from bondage, how can you be intent upon bondage? When the Dharma is taught by the master for the sake of non-grasping, how can you be intent on grasping? Friend, has not the Dharma been taught in many ways by the master for the waning of passion, for the subduing of intoxication, for the restraint of desire, for the abolition of clinging, for the annihilation of the round of existence, for the destruction of craving, for fading away, for cessation, for an extinguishment? Has not the abandoning of sense pleasures been declared in many ways by the master? The full understanding of the perception of sense pleasures, the abolishing of the thirst for sense pleasures, the elimination of thoughts of sense pleasures, the stilling of the fever of sense pleasures. It will not, friend, give rise to confidence in those without it, nor increase the confidence of those who have it, but it will hinder confidence in those without it, and it will cause some with confidence to change their minds. Okay, so his friends gave him an earful. They sympathized, but at the same time, they sympathized and they said, no wonder we understand why you're thin and why you don't look so good. Yeah, but you had access to this beautiful Dharma, and that's leading us out of suffering that the Buddha taught, to lead us to freedom. And you went in the wrong direction. You chose not to follow it and to follow the opposite of it. Okay? So they really let him know how his mind was not thinking correctly in what he did, that he made a poor choice. He wasn't using his wisdom. He wasn't thinking about the Dharma. Okay? So it's not, they are rebuking him, but their purpose isn't to make him feel guilty and awful. Okay? So in the West, we would see this as, oh, my friends are rejecting me, and they hate me, and I'm guilty, and I'm awful. Sudina already felt very badly about what he did. And his Dharma friends confirmed that, yeah, he should have remorse about what he did because he acted in the way opposite to the Dharma. So they talked about it in that way, they talked about his behavior and how it affected him and the state of his own mind. Okay. And then they talked about how his behavior would influence others. So the first part was how, what happened to his mind. But then when they say, it won't give rise to confidence in those without it. So when all the people in society who are not Buddhists, who don't have confidence in the Buddha, hear about what you did, it's not going to make them feel confident in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Okay. Nor will it increase the confidence of those who do have confidence. So all those who do follow the Dharma, who have confidence in the three jewels, it's not going to increase their confidence. But it will hinder confidence in those without it. So the people who don't have confidence, there's no way they're going to come to the Dharma now. And it will cause those with confidence to change their minds. So it's going to adversely affect the people who do have confidence, because when they see that you've done such a thing, they're going to lose confidence in the efficacy of the Dharma, in the purity of the Sangha, in the path set forth by the Buddha. Yeah. So he's saying it's not just your thing, but your behavior is going to affect a lot of other people in an adverse way, and you need to be aware of that. Having rebuked Venerable Sudina in various ways, those monks told the matter to the master. And in this connection, the master convened the Sangha of monks and questioned Venerable Sudina. And so we're going to stop here. Okay? Yeah. So you can imagine how he felt. He felt bad himself. His friends said that. And now the Buddha wants to talk to him about what happened. Do you envy this guy? No. Did he bring it on himself? What's the problem here? The afflictions, isn't it? Yeah, that's the problem. His own afflictions. It's not, sure, his parents could have guilt-tripped him, but, his afflictions bit the hook.
Think about this a lot, actually, but the scary part of it is to see how, when that affliction arises, it so obscures the mind that you think you're fine. You think what you're doing is just good. It's clear. It makes total sense. And it's only after the fog is cleared or your Dharma friends have pointed it out or whatever, you look back and you go, oh my goodness. But when you're in it, you can't see it.
Yeah.
And that's scary.
Yeah, that's the really scary part. Because we all know, when attachment comes over our mind, even somebody says, hey, that's attachment, you're exaggerating things. We can't hear it. And when we're angry, if somebody says, hey, you're angry, you're on the verge of doing something dangerous, we can't hear it. Yeah, we just get mad at the people who are trying to help us, even though they're our friends who have a sincere motivation. But the people who flatter us, who tell us what we're doing is good, even when what we're doing is completely under the influence of afflictions, we love those people. Yeah? I mean, all Sudina's worldly friends at home were probably saying, good going, Sudina. You loosened up. You were so uptight. You went out and enjoyed a bit with your wife, and now your parents are happy. And yeah? And we call those people our friends. But the people who warn us when our mind is going down, on the cliff, we say, get off my back and stop. I didn't ask for your advice. And that's what's so scary, is to see our own mind do that. Yeah. Yeah. So that's one of the reasons why we live in community, because you have, if Sudina was living in his community and not wandering apart, and mom and dad came here and said, you need to have sex with your wife and give us a son. The community would have said, we love you, mom and dad, but no. Or we wouldn't have said that to mom and dad. We would have said that to Sudina. But would Sudina have listened? We don't know, because sometimes even your teacher, even the other monastics give you good advice. You are so stuck on what you want to do and your own opinion.
Back to his initial motivation for going back to the town he's from.
Uh-huh.
It was to give offerings to the monks, and then he gave them barley, and then I guess he didn't invite them to his parents' house to eat with him, right? Because wouldn't one of them have stopped him and said...
Yeah, you would think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the parents may not have. They may want to have just had their own son alone, because they didn't want the monks to have some sway over him. Yeah. Yeah. Well, give food to your friends. Yeah. But, That's fine. They don't need to come to the house. Anyway, you have a lot of friends. We have, our house is only a small mansion. We can't accommodate all of them. Yeah.